Ayman Khan here for Seconds Out. It's my pleasure to be joined by, for the first time in the office in the new year, with Frank Warren. Frank, it's great to see you ringing in the new year, as we've mentioned. A very special edition, okay? This is not another usual interview. We have asked the Seconds Out listeners to supply their questions to Frank Warren. For the fans, I think we're going to call it. Frank Warren asking all your questions. So, Frank, first of all, I'll start off with just how are you doing? How was your new year?
I'm good, yeah. I've got like a lot of people with the flu and the cough. I had a bad cough and flu. But other than that, it was very quiet and nice to switch off. It's a time for the family, you know, getting together and, you know, and that like everybody, I enjoyed that. And it was nice. Watched a bit of football on television and everything. Couldn't go to any matches because I was coughing and spluttering. But yeah, good, nice and peaceful, and getting ready. And I'm really looking forward to our shows this year. We've got some tremendous fights coming up, some brilliant shows. We're changing our broadcaster as of April. That's going to be a great new challenge for us, working with DAZN. I'm looking forward to that. Having had a fantastic time working with BT, which then became TNT, and you know, they've got lovely and great people there we work with, and as I say, but we're off and looking forward to the challenge and establishing ourselves as the premier promoters on DAZN.
Looking forward to it. Sounds like another great year for boxing. Let's get to those questions then. And if you would like to supply any questions for future questions and answer sessions with Frank Warren, you can do on the community tab or on our social medias. You can find the link in the description below. So the first question, as I load it up, comes from Thomas Newman, and he asks, for the next 5v5, who would you like to put into the mix?
Well, Thomas, that's a very difficult one for Queensberry because we're blessed with so much talent. Obviously, we've got to pick our weights first, our weight divisions. I mean, it makes no. I'm sure it don't take a lot of brains for anybody to know that one of the weight divisions we would certainly be picking is the heavyweight division, which we're very strong in that, and we'll see what the other guys come up with, what the other side comes up with. But I'm really looking forward to it, and we've got it penciled in for May, so I really do believe it's going to be another great night.
Joe Kennedy asks, what top fights that haven't already been made does he feel Riyadh season can make in the next 12 months that real boxing fans want to watch? And he stresses not casual.
Look, you know what, we work this 24/7, and he sounds you sound yourself a very a real boxing fan, but we do need to also attract and broaden the appeal of boxing, certainly in this country and around the world, which has happened certainly in a big way in the last was it 14, 15 months in Riyadh, which has become the world capital of boxing. There are a lot of really good fights to be made there. One I would really like to see, providing he comes through in his big fight that he's got on the 22nd of February again in Riyadh, is Daniel Dubois. If he comes through against Joe Parker, I'd love to see the rematch with him and OIeksandr Usyk. Be a great fight. I'd love to see that.
Here's another one from Thomas Newman. He asks here, were there any other pay-per-view events that beats Amir Khan versus Breeders Prescott as the most unfortunate card Frank Warren has staged, where you also had Audley labouring to a victory and Alex Arthur losing to Nicky Cook? Did it question your judgment when it comes to trainers recommending opponents versus trusting that of your matchmakers?
Well, it was a very disappointing night for Amir, and it's a disappointment for his team. They were insistent about that fight. I didn't want the fight at all. Not because I didn't feel he could win the fight. I hadn't seen Prescott, and I couldn't get hold of any footage or anything of him to look at. And it was done against my best wishes. And it's my own fault at the end of the day for allowing it to happen. Because in the end, they were so adamant about it. And Amir's dad, Shah, who was basically spoke for the team. They said that the then trainer who they appointed said he was the perfect fight. This is what he should be doing. And I basically got a little bit pissed off, and I just said to him, you know what, do it. That's what you want, do it. And I shouldn't have done that. That was more from my No, it weren't my head working. That was more saying to somebody, you know what, you know more than I do, get on with it. And all I remember is after the fight, first thing they was asking me what they should do. And I said, first thing I was, you'd get rid of your matchmaker. And I said, well, we'll see what happens. But 2 fights later, I think it was around 2 fights later, I got him to move up a division and fight for the world title. But when they were weighing in, I looked at Prescott and I looked at Amir, and it was like a man and a boy. The size of him, and you could see, and I thought he's going to have his hands full with this fella. I just knew it.
So just to add a bit of context for that, like when I grew up, boxing for me was basically just all Amir Khan. Obviously, growing up in an Asian family, same last surname like Khan. So I remember watching that fight, and we were all just so shocked as to what had happened. I just want to follow up. Off of the back of that defeat, what does that do to the value of a fighter? And like you mentioned there, of course, he bounced back and he did win the world title. But in the immediacy, what does that do to the value of a fighter when it comes to the public and also financial?
Well, financially, it hits them. There's no doubt about that. And look, boxing's about winners. It's about a winning game. But there are a lot of fighters who've been beaten in the past who've come back. Daniel Dubois, for example, who's come back. But Amir's defeat was pretty devastating. And we brought him back. We've done it. I know we did a brilliant job with him. And but it was, at the end of the day, being blunt about it, the family, they knew better than we did. And that's what, not just in that fight at the end. I think he went off to America too soon. I think he should have been a big fish over here and then gone to America like Ricky Hatton did, like other fighters have done, Naz and so forth. It was all a rush job for him.
Christian Jones asks here, what is Frank Warren's opinion on a prime Calzaghe versus a prime Canelo?
It's a bloody good fight. But I'll tell you something, I'd back Joe Calzaghe. Joe Calzaghe was a great fighter. And he suffered a lot of injuries. He pulled out a lot of fights through hand injuries and so forth. But I'll tell you what, once he was in that ring, he was a handful, a massive handful for anybody. He had a great will to win, a big heart. and at his best, no one would beat him. I fancy him to beat Canelo.
Would that fight have to have happened in the UK?
I don't care where it happened. Joe didn't want to travel. For a long time, we couldn't get him to travel. He said he had a phobia about flying. And eventually he did. But, that fight would probably have to, in those days, would have taken place in the States, no doubt about it. Today we'd be saying it probably taking place in Riyadh.
Next one here from Arand Sun 188. They've all got funny names here. Top 3 fighters Fury should face next.
Top 3 fighters?
Fury should face next. Tyson Fury.
It's a difficult question, mate. First of all, I don't know whether Tyson wants to fight on. That's a choice he will make. I think he will, but that's a choice he has to make. His 2 fights that he's had with Usyk have been great fights. Very, very close fights. I thought, I've said plenty of times what I thought about the fights, but they were close fights. And the reason they're close fights is because they're 2 great fighters, and they will always have a great fight. If you made a 3rd fight, it'll be a great fight. It'll be a great competitive fight because that's how those stars will gel. I think an Usyk fight, everybody wants to, everybody mentions all the time about him and AJ, which should be maybe a fight. There's a few out there, but that's if he wants to do it. And I would not put a fight to him. It's got to be his choice. He's a very wealthy guy. He's made a lot of money. He's got a lovely family. He's sacrificed a lot. And I genuinely do believe that if he does fight on, it's got to come from his heart that he wants to do it. He doesn't need to do it for money now, although obviously he want to get paid. But let him enjoy his moment. There's no rush for anything at the moment for him. He's not got to rush into anything.
Yeah, there is a follow-up question from that. It's along the same sort of lines you can imagine you'd expect. Can he foresee Fury versus Joshua happening this year? How likely?
If he's going to fight, and I'm sure it will be, he will fight sometime this year. What does AJ do? I think it's the only fight for AJ, isn't it? I can't see, I can't see him getting back in the ring again with Daniel. I can't see that happening. and the fight that makes the most sense for him commercially. And again, he's a guy who doesn't need to fight. He's a very wealthy guy. He's done extremely well. He's got a fantastic career that he's had. He should be proud of what he's done. Olympian, gold medalist, 2-time world champion. He's done everything that's been asked of him.
Next question comes from Stuart Winkham 5892. Will Frank Warren work with Mitchell Smith again as he's back fighting again? And if Moses will fight Pulev for the WBA regular belt to be the youngest heavyweight champion?
Mitchell, there's one of my disappointments in boxing. Lovely guy. I've really gotten well with Mitchell. Looks, we've done well together. And he won Young Boxer of the Year. Boxing Writers Young Boxer of the Year. Great little fighter, just went after Rouse. Lost it all. And it was one of those things again where talent gets you that far, but dedication and wanting to do it, and listening gets you to the top of the tree. And he was so talented, and and as I say, I really liked him. Who knows? He had a win, didn't he? Was it just before Christmas?
Yeah, I think
he had a win. Let's see how he goes. I mean, I like Mitchell. I haven't seen him since, but yeah, it'd be nice to catch up with him. And as regarding the Pulev fight, what a fight that'd be, wouldn't it? I have no problem with that fight.
Next question comes from Michael Berkeley 4613. He says, I would like to ask Frank's opinion on boxers going into MMA and his overall opinion of MMA competition from Mike in Denver.
Well, I'm not a bit expert on MMA, and I don't make myself out to be one. I've not been a big follower of it. I think most boxers will beat MMA fighters, but there's a few guys who have turned over the years and become good boxers, like Max Skelton comes to mind. Quite a few of them, and I think a boxer going to do MMA, I don't know how they would fare.
James Toney went into MMA a number of years back, very old. He got taken down and submitted.
Yeah, he's an old guy then, isn't he? When they do it, it's a bit like, it's a bit like Mike Tyson recently. He's an old guy. At their best, do they want to do it? I mean, it's not something you just say, oh, right, I'm going to become that. It's a different discipline altogether, a totally different discipline, and and different skill sets. But I can't think of many fighters who, a lot have come over from MMA, but I can't think of too many boxers who've gone the other way, so I can't really comment on that. But I would always back a boxer to beat an MMA fighter, one against one.
Next question we have here is from Brownboy 780. Could we see an Anfield Stadium fight featuring Nick Ball, etc.?
Absolutely, Brownboy. We'll get the blue triangle boy up there with a round boy. We'll be flying. Yeah, looking forward to that. We would definitely do that.
Guitar 387 says, I'd love to know how he feels personally about his cousin Lenny McLean and how he thinks Lenny would do in today's heavyweight division.
How do I feel about him? Well, he's passed away now. Lenny, I didn't know any different back in those days. I was a young kid. I was 23 when I was promoting him. I think it was 23, 24, whenever I was. And Lenny was just he wasn't a boxer. He was a guy who worked on the door of a club. And in those days, you had people like Roy Shaw, Solly Francis, quite a few of these old guys. They were all fighting each other. And he was one of those. And I wound up getting involved with him because he had some problems and so forth. I wasn't really that interested in getting involved, but I did. Lenny in with a boxer, and he fought a few boxers, ex-pros. He fought, I think it was Sid Paddock from Southampton who'd done a job on him. Absolutely done a job on him. The first couple of rounds, he was a bit wary of Lenny, and then he got on top of him and boxed his head off. Cliff Fields from Dunstable, he done the same thing with him. He struggled with anybody who had any boxing knowledge. My other relation, Johnny Wall, he's passed away too. He was a very good light heavyweight. He liked life outside the ring as well. He wasn't as dedicated as should, but he had tremendous skills. He was a very good boxer. He worked with Lenny a few times, but Lenny, he just, fighting a fighter with what he had, a proper boxer. He got, as I mentioned, those couple of fighters he got beat. Had he been younger and trained, come through the system like as an amateur and so forth, who knows what would happen. He was a big guy. I mean, he was that big when he was 12. He was naturally big. He was a bit of a bully, Lenny. He was a bully as well. He was funny, had a great sense of humour, but he was a bully as well.
This one comes from Michael Manning. He says, I'd love to know what goes into signing an amateur prospect, determining what would make them a profitable pro boxer. What goes into how much they are considered receiving for a signing bonus or promotional contract? That always seems like a mystery to me. Like, how do you deem who deserves a shot, who's considered a possible late bloomer, or a one-hit wonder? Thank you.
Well, they're all the things you ponder and you wonder about when you're looking at a young fighter. It depends of his age, what he's done as an amateur. Has he won any titles as an amateur? Is he an Olympian? Is he a young guy, a junior who's really looked really good, but and you feel he can go places? I mean, we've made investments in a few guys, signed them up very young, and they've come through. There's a few who haven't though. They haven't progressed. They haven't, what they showed when they was young. I suppose it's like football. You see a lot of young kids sign up for football clubs. How many of them make it? I think we're a bit more successful than most, though, in identifying talent and nurturing it and bringing it through. But it's an investment. It doesn't always work out, and when it does, it's very pleasing.
We have this is from Brownboy again. He says, could we see Chantel Cameron versus Natasha Jonas?
Yeah, I mean, look, she's there to fight anybody. She's a very, very experienced fighter. She just looks better and better since, certainly as far as I'm concerned, with Queensberry. Everything she's done with Queensberry has been brilliant. There are some great fights out there, as well as the obvious one, the big rematch with the Irish legend. I mean, I'd like to see that again, but we will see. But that's a good fight. It's a very good fight.
Here we have from Lucas, and I'm going to try and pronounce the last name. He's a bit blunt with the question, but I'll dress it up a little bit. Do you consider,
Say it how it is.
it says here, when are you retiring from boxing? I would have dressed it as, do you consider ever retiring from boxing?
I'll retire when I don't want to do it anymore. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'm 73 in February. I'm enjoying myself. What do I want to retire for? If I'm retired, I'll be going to the shows and watching them, so I might as well go and get paid.
The next question is a bit of a random one. It's from Roscoe Stark. He says, I genuinely would ask, Frank, have you ever seen the 80s movie Total Recall?
Have I seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't remember it, though.
You get some mad questions sometimes. This isn't a name I'm too familiar with, Frank, so this is a bit of a knowledge gap for me, but it comes from LVD Sports. What exactly happened between Frank and Tommy Shields? Big prospect, solid amateur, heavy puncher, good following, undefeated, ticked all the boxes.
Ticks all the boxes and more. Tommy was a really, really good fighter. He just disappeared. I think he went off to Australia, and I believe he gone into religion. But he was a lovely fella, and he could fight. Big, tall, blonde kid. I remember getting a terrible cut in a fight when he was younger. It may have been one of the last fights he had before he sort of went off the scene. But he had a terrible cut. And I was screaming at the corner to pull him out, and he went, no, I don't want to be pulled out. And he went out and stopped the guy. He was an excellent fighter, and everything. Chap who asked the question said he's right about him. Tremendous prospect, but he just disappeared.
The part of the question said it was said to have a disagreement. Was there any disagreement between you two?
No, not at all. Not to my knowledge, anyway.
That's all the questions there, Frank. I appreciate you answering all the questions we have from the listeners. Once again, if you have any further questions for hopefully another edition of For the Fans, get them into Seconds Out community tab or on our social medias down below. But thank you, Frank, for answering those questions. Do you enjoy it?
Of course I do. It's nice to, see what the fans are thinking and what they want to ask. Yeah, not a problem.